So, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to my September Women Leaders interview series. I'm Emily Wishall of Wishall Wellness, Live in Alignment. And today I am so excited. I'm here with Nicole Setty Koukou. Nicole is a somatic-based psychotherapist. She is a death doula and she's the Yoga of Undoing teacher.
That's right.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, Nicole.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
And just before we're going to be talking about death and dying and many things, but what is the Yoga of Undoing?
The Yoga of Undoing is based on the teacher Vanda Scaravelli, who is Italian, and it's very much about connecting to your inner self through releasing tension and really coming into the power of gravity, how that affects the body. It's about the release of the spine. It's about the breath and the ground and the space around you and how that informs the body.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. And we think about in the Rolfing community, we think about gravity a lot, but it's something a lot of things aren't talked about.
Ida Rolf and Vanda, I think they may have known each other and influenced each other. So
very cool.
Yeah.
So Nicole and I just got finished with a little lovely chat over coffee with another woman, and let's just start with so she works as a death doula. What is it? What is a death doula?
So a death doula, you may be familiar with the term a birth doula. So this is the same thing but at the other end. So a death doula is a companion, holds the person who's dying, holds their hand through this journey into the unknown, holds their hand as well as the hand of the family. So it's a non-medical support.
Okay.
So it's emotional support, it's spiritual support. And a lot of us come to the end of our lives perhaps without family, without kids, and this is a way to have somebody with you to support you through that journey.
Yeah, what a gift too. And death is something that we don't tend to talk about much. Like our culture and society, I think we especially, there's no conversation. I think a lot of us, we get uncomfortable about it. We avoid talking about it. But ultimately, we're all going to die.
That's right. We do live in a death-phobic society. We tend to put death over there, something that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
But death is inevitable. None of us get out alive. And I think that when we remember the impermanence of life, we remember that we are all going to go through this same journey. We're all on that same path. We arrive through the portal of birth. We live in this amazing world, and we all end up going through the same portal into the same journey of the portal of death.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that life is impermanent.
What would you say to somebody, because I kind of, well, I have moments, but I think overall I kind of love talking about death. And what would you say to somebody, because I have had this happen where people think, oh, that is so dark, or that's so black, and like, oh, that's just so sad and depressing, like, let's not go there. But I think that there's can be so much light by looking at that. What would your response be to?
I think that we need to remember the heart space, and it's when we get reactions like that, people are in their brains, then they're in thought, and they're trying to avoid that heart space. So it just tells you a lot about that person, and they may not want to go there, and they may not be ready to go there, and that's also fine. So you can't really change somebody. You can only model where you are and how ready you are to meet that heart space and meet the dark spaces in our lives. So it's not easy, but it's about embracing the darkness. It's about embracing the mystery, the unknown, the unseen. And death is the unknown, and we are not always willing to be with that because we are in a culture that likes to control. We like to control everything, and in death there isn't much control there.
And you brought up a point earlier when just speaking about the grieving process and after somebody loses a loved one, and how there's this sense of timelessness in that. And I feel that goes with that control, and maybe part of why it can be challenging. I mean, small piece, obviously, when you lose somebody close, there's much more than that, but to fully allow the grieving process, because our world, we are all so busy, like way busier than ever before. Our lives are so scheduled, so structured, and I think that gives our ego structure some semblance of like pride and worth, because we are controlling and we know what we're supposed to do. And when we might think of life throws a disruption of losing somebody, and that grief of maybe why we resist that process.
So it's really important to validate our grief, to validate the endings in our lives, whether it's the small endings, the saying goodbye to something material or somebody physical. So it is important to grieve. It is important to be witnessed in our grief. It's actually a human, natural skill that we all need. We need ritual in our lives, and we need to honor our grief. If we don't honor our grief, it shows up in many different forms, whether it's through health, through bad health. So it's something so much easier to avoid and push away, but grief is a valuable skill to be with, and otherwise it gets suppressed and it gets held in the body, and that's not healthy.
Well, and what do you mean by, like, how would you be witnessed in your grief process? Because I know for me, when I want to have a good cry, I shut myself alone in my room and cry.
That's definitely easy to do, but if you can get support with friends, with family, there are different grief groups. I know in Boulder we have the Grief Support Network. We have an amazing training here in Boulder called the Conscious Dying Institute, where we do grief rituals there.
And that's what you went through.
And that's what I went through.
So what is that? Well, not to interrupt your grief ritual thing, but the Conscious Dying Institute.
Yeah, so the Conscious Dying Institute is about bringing more consciousness to our death, so that we can actually, so that can inform our lives, so we can actually find more meaning in our lives. So having a conscious death is about not numbing our death and our dying process, or the dying, and seeing it as a medical event. Is actually a process that is deeply a natural skill and needs to be honored. So the Conscious Dying Institute is an incredible total of 8-day training where we meet our own deaths.
Wow.
We practice our own death as part of it, but we also look at all aspects of death, whether it's the process of dying, the different stages of shutdown of the body, whether it's vigil, whether it's ritual after death, and it's about becoming a death doula and how to accompany somebody through that whole process and be their partner and their friend through it, so they're not feeling alone.
To not leave this world alone. And I think it's sad that so many people, spend probably their last several days, last hour is just alone. We need that. We need to bring the sacredness back into the dying process. And thank you for that. I appreciate this, bringing the sacredness back, and that might bring, because I think it's interesting how you said that death is a skill. Is that how it's not quite how you stated it. So it could be something that could be easily pushed aside, but the sense of death being
something that's deeply human, and we know it. Often people know when it's their time, and they just close down and they just shut down, whether it's through a period of days or just kind of like, this is my time and I'm ready. Rather than it being something that we numb, that we put over there, we sedate our dying. We give them all kinds of medicine just so that they, get cut off and disconnected. And so it's perhaps easier to do that, and it's harder to contact the heart space. But that's what it is to be human, to connect to our heart space, so that brings meaning into our lives.
Yeah. What do you think, this is a big question, but what do you think happens when we die? And you don't have to share.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's such a personal thing, and I think we all have different interpretations, because it is the unseen and it is the mystery, and I think that it's a deeply spiritual meaning making that we have of what happens afterwards. But I like to think that there is something, like my mother said that when she dies she wants to be reincarnated as a bird. So now when I see a bird and I have that space to look at the bird, it reminds me of my mother. So it's just, it's what you make of it. There's nobody who knows. So we all have our own interpretations, and the universe goes on, the soul goes on, and it's just a remembering of that person's soul, and having that soul close to you and informing you of how you want to live your own life.
How did you, this is a unique line of work, and I think really needed. But what inspired you to really traverse down this journey? And
I think with many people it was a calling. It just called me, and it literally just called me. I was given an opportunity to do the training at the Conscious Dying Institute. It really was an opportunity that just showed up, and I just took it, and that's where it's taking me. So it's not something that it's a feeling. It's not something that it was a very unconscious thing. It just showed up.
And you did the training about 4 or 5 years ago?
I did, yeah.
Would you say, how has that shifted, if at all, influenced your daily life?
Yeah, so it's a very deeply transformative training, and I would say that when I remember as I breathe, and in my breathing, I connect to the breath, and the in-breath and the out-breath, and on each out-breath I say to myself, this could be my last breath. This could be my last breath. Or I even picture and feel into, this is my last breath. And that in of itself allows me to live and participate in life fully.
Yeah. And do you ever try and use, I feel like that's a tool.
Yeah,
you can use that as a tool for if you have an experience or a situation walking into where you feel fearful or insecure. Do you have an example, or do you use it that way in your life at all?
Yeah, use it that way, or as we were talking earlier, it could be at the traffic lights. When you get all steamed up about something. On my exhale, that could be my last breath. Who knows? So it's just bringing that as a practical day-to-day tool to remind you of the sacredness of life.
Yeah, life is sacred, yeah. Is there something in your life that maybe in the last 4 years you've done or accomplished, or situations you feel more comfortable in because of having just a more regular awareness that, I am going to die someday. Life is impermanent?
I think when somebody might come to me and tell me that they have a terminal illness, for instance, I feel like I'm more prepared. I'm not sort of like hiding and not wanting to deal or not wanting to face up to that. I feel like I can face that. I have the tools, I have the confidence, I have the knowing, and it's that has helped me work with people who have terminal illnesses.
Oh, I'm sure that's increased your capacity immensely for that. Yeah. And I appreciate how too with when you talk about death, it's not, one, obviously the fundamental is we are all going to die sometime, and honoring that process, honoring the grieving process, being with others as they die, but then also seeing and having ritual around the little deaths that occur every day in our lives. And right now we're in fall, and the leaves are changing, and they're so beautiful, but they're dead.
Yeah,
they're dead. I was going to share that quote that I shared earlier, and I would love to have you talk a little bit about it. So I was at a retreat, I don't know when you're watching, but last weekend, and Dr. Shafali, I'm going to say her last name wrong, Saberi? I don't know how to pronounce her, but she wrote The Awakened Parent and Conscious Parenting, and she was talking about our greatest purpose in this life is to annihilate the ego and live our true self. And I think a lot of us talk about, we want to change and we want to grow, and what she said is change involves death. The question to ask is not, am I willing to change? It's, am I willing to die? And that landed with me, because we're all like, let's change, let's grow, it's light, but there's a lot of darkness in that, and it really is a dying of systematized belief systems or systematized ways of being in the world, or
surrendering. It's about surrendering and letting go of what's no longer helpful and what's no longer useful, so that we can change.
Yeah.
We seem to forget, we seem to skip over that piece of being able to let something die before we can move forward, so that there's a window that can open in order to move forward. And I think that's what death does. Once we've moved through the grief, which we may never ever fully move through, but once we connect to the grief, then something can open up. There's suddenly different possibilities. So death is such an interesting topic, and death beckons community. It brings people together.
I love that. I would love for you to speak about how death beckons community.
Yeah, so just through the connection that death, a dying person, makes with the people that surrounds them.
Yeah.
There's ritual, usually, depending on your affiliations of the dying person, but there's always some kind of ritual post-death. There's memorials. So, I actually, my sister met her husband at a funeral.
Really?
Yes, and I know somebody else that met their husband.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, because probably also at funerals, generally speaking, people are more, maybe more present, unguarded, because they're more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it does, bring people together.
Yeah. And how interesting, this time we're living, I think many of us feel more disconnected than ever, and really craving community, and not just, online community, but in person, like human to human, skin to skin community. Yet there can be that avoidance of death. And I think even just having conversations of it, just amazes me how much more connected we can feel, and just remembering our humanness and helping us see the humanness in the other person more.
Yeah, definitely. There is a sense that we disconnect from our dying process, and we were talking about ghosting earlier. The idea of ghosting in social media, and to me,
And for people who maybe don't know what ghosting means, ghosting.
So ghosting is when somebody rejects you on social media, you just don't ever hear from them again. So you could be dating and then boom, that's it. No
Even
more
over text
contact.
messages, it just may just be MIA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and I feel like that's a reflection on our relationship to death too, that it's something that we'd rather not deal with. Just like, so it's about that heart connection, it's about being with our own hearts, and that's painful, and we haven't been taught that, you know, the pain is okay, that the pain is part of it. If we don't deal with the pain, it just festers and it gets buried and it's still there, it doesn't go away. But if we open ourselves to the discomfort, we can move on. So, you know, shutting and disconnecting is just only going to increase the discomfort and the messiness.
Yeah. What would you say is the greatest gift of death?
I think it helps us to connect with our humanness. We're not robots. We're human, and we can only know our humanness, really. We can only know life through death, because they're in relationship. Can't have one without the other.
Yeah, that's an amazing gift to feel and experience and be reminded of.
Yeah.
So, you know, for anyone who's watched this and, you know, is about to go into their life, which may consist of emails or traffic or meetings, or what would you say, what's a way that we can invite in this awareness into our daily consciousness of remembering, we are all going to die sometime, and not just to be in this, I'm all going to die, so what does it matter, but in a beautiful, honoring way. Do you have a suggestion around, you know, a practical daily thing that can help remind us?
Yeah, I think what I mentioned earlier about the breath, connecting to your out breath and remembering that it's the last, that it might be the last breath that you have, but also really whilst you're doing that is connect to your heart space. Because it can be so much, it could be so much in our heads and so much into thought, and that's so automatic, but actually feeling and being okay with the discomfort and with the idea that this could be your last breath. That might bring you sadness, but through that sadness you find life and hope and love and meaning in your day-to-day.
I love that. I think that's a great, about an amazing tool, and really an interesting thing, I think, to ponder and just to be with, of what if it is my last breath, what does that feel like, how does my body respond, how do my, you know, thoughts, and really my heart, what does my heart feel?
It allows you to participate more fully.
I'm excited to just play with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just
play with it all.
See if that influences my own day and actions. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being here and for sharing. I so appreciate it and so honor the work you're doing, and honor getting to have this conversation with you, because I feel it's so important. And
to have more conversations around
and especially, you know, to be, as you're a death doula, and creating support and that capacity and container for people to not go through it alone, and to also to have somebody who is trained to help with the emotional, the spiritual, and I'm sure you help not just the person who's dying, but even just the family and the support system themselves, and helping them like honor and allow that grieving process.
Yeah, and actually it's something that you can do well in advance before you're even ready, or before you're even, not doing well or coming to the end of your life, to actually prepare and do a life review. So there's something that I do called the best 3 months, which is about actually imagining that you have 3 months to live and looking at all the domains in your life, spiritual, practical, emotional, physical, and looking and saying, oh, what would I like to do with these last 3 months of my life that would complete my life. So we go through this whole process in fine detail, and we actually go through whatever it is. Let's say, oh, I've never been to India, I want to go to India. You actually make plans to do that. So it's quite intense, but it really reconfigures how you live.
That's incredible. So it's called, what, the best 3 months of your life?
Yeah, care planning.
I feel like that is a great gift to give yourself to.
Yeah.
My first thought is, ooh, I want to do that, but then I'm like, I don't think I could really do that though, because can I really take time off and do? But it's fun just even sitting with the judgments that come up of, oh, how I can't do it, now's not the time.
Exactly. So we work it out. We make sure you find the time to do it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. So
how can we stay in touch with you?
So I have a website, www.bodybrainwisdom.com.
Body Brain, and I'll have a link at the bottom of this video, Body Brain Wisdom.
Yeah, and everything is on there, the yoga of undoing, the death doula, and the somatic therapy.
Beautiful. And do you do distance therapy or just local?
I do distance. If I know the client, so maybe 1 out of 4 sessions I can do distance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you do have in-person, if you're in Boulder, close to Boulder, Colorado,
Yes.
Nicole offers in-person yoga classes that I highly recommend
Yoga
checking out.
Intentions in North Boulder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I guess we'll just end with the breath and with the exhale.
Yes.
And
so take your exhale and just trust that it could be your last.
thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom, and I'm really, really grateful.
Thank you for having me. Really lovely.
And thank you everyone for tuning in, and love to hear what you thought, and if this brought up anything for you, feel free to send me or Nicole. You can email her you can find her website if you're left with any lingering questions or feeling some struggles coming up. Know that support is here, and would love to continue the conversation with you. So thanks for tuning in, and take care. Happy fall.
Happy fall.